We can't hear you, Tom.
Yeah. So before I get into Boggleboard, I'm just going to go through and create like more classes just so everyone can see different classes being created, and just it's all about the repetition of creating classes and interacting with them and calling methods and instance variables, class methods, and changing instance variables and stuff like that. So let's go ahead. I'm going to create a student class. Let's go. Class student. And I want to initialize or create some, what are some variables that a student has generally associated with them? First name, last name, or the student has like an ID. Yeah. There's a date of birth, maybe an age. What is it?
Major.
Major. Okay, we can do that. Great. So yeah, I think that's enough to get started. So def init. So anytime we create a new student, we want to grab this initial information from a student. Self.first name, last name, ID. Who's it? Major? Let's do major. Okay. So self.first name equals first name. Self.last name equals last name. Self.ID equals ID. Self.major equals major. Cool. And also I want to create a default of whether or not this student is enrolled. So enrolled equals false. So this initial variable, this last enrolled variable, if it's not, whenever a student is created, if it doesn't take in like a true or false variable, it's going to default to false. So self.enrolled equals enrolled.
Did you also put that outside as a separate variable outside of it? In the class.
Like right here?
Yeah.
We can, but then that'd be a class variable. However, they'd have, yeah, I guess you could have that, but you rarely will keep, but yeah, you can.
Okay. Yeah. Is it the same thing, or
Well,
is there anything different if you were to do that?
Anybody would have access to a student's class variable, or this will actually essentially be able to be changed, no matter how many. So if you create multiple instances, let's actually do that. Enrolled equals false initially, and let's delete this. I want to create a new student called Tom. Student Tom. Last name Preet. ID 1 2 3 4. Major finance. That's what I did. It's great. So I want to gain access to. Oh, let's do another one. Ruthie equals student. Ruthie Cohen 7-8, and let's do it photography. I spell photography? Great. So if I want to access the enrolled variable of this class for Tom, how do I access it? So if I want to access this enrolled variable for Tom, tom.enrolled. So I'm going to print this. And I'm going to run this Python oop.py. So it's false. But what if I want to enroll Tom? How do I change the enrolled variable to true? Well, hold on, let's look at also Ruthie. So what should it say? false, false. Okay, so Tom is not enrolled, and either is Ruthie. But what if I wanted to make Tom enrolled? So if I do Tom enrolled equals true, hold on, we'll get to that. You are right though. But this is why you'd want to keep the enrolled within we want the enrolled to be an instance variable. So if we create Tom enrolled equals true, oh, whoops. So initially, down here in Python, I'm going to run this file. It's false, true. But what if I wanted to look at Ruthie's? She's technically not enrolled yet. Oh, what? Okay, I guess that worked. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. But essentially, we want all the enrolled to be an instance variable. Yeah, for some reason I thought it was going to still say true.
So how do you set defaults then? Or what's the ideal way of setting a default?
A default, you just do enrolled equals true.
So then major would default to undefined, right? Or undeclared, because they wouldn't be declared immediately.
You have to set it up.
You'd have to, like, so right now it is declared.
Right, but if you just left it blank, then it would fill that in automatically?
No, it'd say, like, it'd throw an error. So if I decided not to do finance, I left that out, and I ran to say init type error missing one required positional argument major.
I remember this from yesterday.
Yeah, it's like major equals
Finance.
default value.
Yeah.
So is there a way to do a default that if we
can.
need something blank?
Major equals undeclared.
Or yeah, like undeclared. We could do that.
Undeclared major.
And then if we just say nothing for the specific instance, it will freak out?
Yeah, so if I just did default values to all my thing, it'll be fine. But now if I wanted to check the major of Tom, Tom dot major Tom, see it's undeclared.
Right. So if,
No, go ahead.
But Ruthie could put something. So
Wait,
there's this option.
if you did Tom, comma, pre, comma, 1, 2, 3, 4, comma, space, comma, false, it would put major as undeclared and enrolled as false?
Probably, yeah.
Let's just skip that value to content.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're gonna say, Justin?
Oh yeah, going back one, I was a little surprised that when you pulled that variable out, that it worked. And I guess like that it assigned it to an instance each time, that it gave it a enrolled status. When would you want to do that, or when does it make sense to? And does it, what kind of flexibility does it give?
See,
So when you pulled it out up above and declared it, but it was it's still applying to each instance. I was a little surprised, and then what does it make sense to do that? Maybe
to do this.
Yeah.
So I'll get to that. I'll give you an example. Okay. So right now we're enrolled equals false. Let's do. Yes.
In line 3, is it any good practice to put any variables or anything there, or no?
Yeah, I'm gonna get to that right now. So let's back up. Should go all the way back to root to cone. I know what I did. I see what happened. But so I can get access to enrolled. I want to create another variable called number of students. I'm going to have it equal 0. And as Daniel mentioned before, if we want to enroll a student, we should write a method that enrolls a student. def enroll student, and takes in self. We don't really need to do anything. We don't need to take in any arguments. And we want to do self.enrolled equals true. So right now, oh, this should be false. So initially, let's do print tom.enrolled. Clear. False. And then I'm going to actually tom.enroll student. I'm going to invoke it, and it should be true. Now, I'm down here in the terminal. So when I first initialized this student, Tom, I didn't pass in any enrolled, so the default value is false. It assigns it to self.enrolled equals false. I have this enroll, excuse me, enroll student method that just when you invoke it, it changes the enrolled instance variable to true. So I'm down here, instantiated a new student named Tom and Ruthie. We'll get to Ruthie in a second. And I'm printing Tom enrolled, just check to see what the status of my enrollment is. And then I'm going to actually enroll the student. And then I'm going to print Tom again, tom.enroll again to check the enrollment. Down here in the terminal, I'm going to execute this code. What should it be? False true. But this class variable, the number of students, that should be 1. Now, how do I increase the value?
Next line on those.
I can do return student. This is how I access class variables. Num of students plus equals 1. So I can print enroll. And I can do student dot num of students dot num of students. Or so in addition to enrolling, changing my instance variable to true for this specific student, I'm changing the class variable num of students to increase by 1. And you can just do that by student num of students plus equals 1. So I'm down here, this print enroll student should be false. I'm printing the number of students, just check the initial number of students. I'm enrolling Tom, which is going to change the instance variable enroll to true. And it's also going to add 1 to this class variable num of students. And I'm checking to see if it's enrolled, if Tom's enrolled, and also I'm checking the class variable num of students. So I'm down here in the terminal, Python OOP. Oh no, about syntax. Does that work? I do plus. Maybe it's because I returned. There we go, that's weird. Okay. Yeah, it's because I can't return and do an execution at the same time. So if we look down here, here's this first false statement. Number of students is 0. Then Tom is enrolled. And then the number of students equals 1. What if I wanted to enroll, or Ruthie dot enroll student, execute that. I don't need to check Tom anymore. What should be the number of students? Clear down here in the terminal. Bring this up. So enroll student for Tom dot enroll student. I'm increasing the class variable by 1. And then I'm enrolling Ruthie. Hers changes to true, and I'm increasing the student, or the number of students class variable by 1 again. So now it's 2. So that's something you can use class variables. You can change throughout the entire class. So the reason why I wasn't changing for mine, when it was like true, because I was doing the instance of Tom, checking that specific class variable. Scroll up. This up.
Tom,
Yes.
to go back to the default, how do we have a default for something that isn't on the end? So I tried doing the major. I said major equals but undeclared. And then when I created Tom, I did Tom, comma, pre, comma, 1, 2, 3, 4, comma, space, comma, true. So just leaving out the major.
We'll get into that. It's called, I think, quards. We'll get into that next week.
All right, because it didn't.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Maybe a question to get a little ahead of myself, but yeah, would defining a class like student be its own Python file in the context of a bigger program?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's look at another way. So right now we're also importing, as Kenneth was saying, like it depends on how many parameters you put, and they have to be in the right order. I know Noah mentioned this yesterday. Let's see if this works.
We know, like, if the last one isn't specified, it will work. I don't know how to get one in the middle.
We'll get into that next week. But there's a way to get around that as well. Instead of passing in, what I got, major, finance, enrolled. All right. I just want to pass in student info. I can come down here, just Tom info to create an object. First name equals Tom. And the last name equals Preet. Was it ID? Was 1, 2, 3, 4. Major is finance. What was the last one? Enrolled? False. So I can pass in one variable or one argument called Tom info. Now, how do I access objects? Object key values. So I've got the student info, which is Tom's info, Tom info. It's got these keys and values. ID, 1, 2, 3, 4, major, enrolled, finance. Now I want to assign each one to this instance variable. How do I access the first name in Tom info? When I'm creating a new, what if I do student info, is it dot? Like that? Let's test it. Let's just, I'm gonna comment that out. Tom student info. I'm gonna print Tom dot first name, because I can access each instance variable by just doing dot and then the name of the instance variable. Let's see if we get Tom to show up. Haven't done this. Oh no, last name top, Tom, invalid syntax. Oh, so I see last name, this doesn't work. It looks like I'm missing a comma there. Hopefully that works. Oh no, what does it say? Line 18. Does that have to be? that right? It's been a while since I worked in objects in Python.
Bob, you call it as first name as a string as well, so maybe it was because that.
Yep, so my keys need to be strings. I have to put the parentheses or commas or quotes around them. So it looks like this worked. So this Tom info got passed in as an object, which only takes in one argument, this init file, which is an object that has all the information about the student. And I can assign the first name by accessing the object that I passed in, Tom info. So Tom info first name equals Tom. I can do the same with what is it? Student and student info, ID, student info, same with major, and enrolled. So that's a little easier on how to pass in parentheses, so you don't have to pass in a bunch of arguments and ensure that they're in the correct form, like in the correct row or in the correct space when you're passing in information. Any questions?
I had a question that goes kind of back to the instance variables. Would you have an instance of number of students?
Yes. If so, we're going to get into inheritance, and you're going to be essentially in the future, in the upcoming, like later on this week, mainly next week, you're going to have multiple classes that interact with one another. So you will have, like, instead of student, I really should have an entire different class called school. And school keeps track of how many students I have or are enrolled in the school and everything like that. So in that case, the school class school will have, like,
To the student class. You have a class within a class.
no, it won't be like within a class, but you can inherit certain methods. We'll get into that as well, but
One kind of an example that's more relevant, well, not more relevant, but also relevant. Imagine doing boggle board, where the board was one class and each dice was another object, a dice object. Like if I was designing that game from the ground up, that's what I would do.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Now we think of this.
so like here, you'd have a student, and then you'd inherit methods, and every time a new student is created in the schools, like the number of students enrolled would increase by one. But we're going to get into that next week as well, like classes interacting with one another. And you'll be like actually calling student, stuff like that. In the meantime, the current challenges you're going to be doing aren't that complex with regards to working with multiple classes with one another. What else? You can change. Yeah. Let's take a 7-minute break, and I'll try to run through Boggleboard as fast as possible before Modi comes in. So back at 9:30, and we'll get started.